JBN, we keep you informed. I'm Michelle Jones, and in the news, more than a dozen murders recorded over the weekend. The police were kept busy on the weekend as gunmen went on the rampage, carrying out a series of deadly attacks across several police divisions. According to information received, at least 14 murders have been committed over the weekend. Several of the people were left with gunshot wounds. 8 of the murders were recorded on Saturday. In one of the attacks, 2 men were shot, one fatally, in Churchill, Flankers, St. James, on Saturday night. The deceased has been identified as 27-year-old Christopher Mowat, a shopkeeper of Churchill, Flankers. A 27-year-old recording artist was also injured in the incident. It's reported that about 8 p.m., the 2 men were standing in the community when they were shot by a lone gunman who escaped in a waiting motor car. A man was also shot dead in Hayes, Clarendon, on Saturday night. Investigators say 41-year-old Sion Copeland, otherwise called Juba, was shot at his home about 10 o'clock. Murder suspect Chukum killed by a gunman in Manchester. A man was listed as a suspect and person of interest in several murders, shootings and robberies committed in Manchester and St. Elizabeth was killed by a gunman in Old England, Manchester on Monday morning. Police identified the deceased as Aldo Scott, otherwise called Chukum or Shortman, a notorious figure in south-central Jamaica who managed to elude the police on multiple occasions. He is one of our persons of interest for a whole heap of robberies and murders and would have launched several operations in search of him. We wanted him for questioning, said a police source. The source said that about 1:30 a.m., residents of Old England heard loud explosions and called the police. The source said when the police team arrived at the scene, they identified the shooting victim as Scott. He was found lying on his back with gunshot wounds to the head in front of the Old England Postal Agency. Scott was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead. Circleville rocked by 2 murders in 24 hours. The police are trying to determine whether there is a connection between the murder of an elderly man whose mutilated body was found on Friday and Saturday's killing of another man in the community of Circleville, St. Catherine. Residents reportedly stumbled upon the body of 77-year-old Hubert McLaren in a section of the district on Friday. On Saturday evening, investigators were called back to the community after the burnt remains of Janoy Smith, otherwise called Dada, were discovered. Both men were from the community. Although the police have not established a motive, some residents have insisted that Smith was linked to the killing of the elderly man. Construction worker gunned down, 2 injured outside Westmoreland Bar. 1 man is dead and another 2 are nursing gunshot wounds after they were shot outside a bar at Gordon District in Whitehouse, Westmoreland on Saturday night. Dead is 34-year-old Damian Thompson, otherwise called Dashka, a construction worker from the community. Reports from the Corporate Communications Unit CCU of the Jamaica Constabulary Force JCF are that about 10 p.m. Thompson was among a group of people at the location when an unknown assailant arrived and opened gunfire, hitting him and 2 others. The police were summoned and the injured men were transported to the hospital where Thompson was pronounced dead. The other patrons escaped unhurt. The Westmoreland police reported that as of February 8, 9 people have been murdered in the parish. Investigation continues. Probe into fire that killed mother and daughter. The Jamaica Fire Brigade has intensified its probe into Sunday afternoon's Frank Cardiff Hall, St. Anne, that left a young mother and her daughter dead. At the scene of the incident on Monday morning, District Officer O'Neill Carr from the St. James Fire Department said that investigators are still trying to determine the cause of the blaze. The deceased have been identified as 26-year-old Shellyan Hamilton and her 6-year-old daughter, Gabriella Lambert. Both are from Cardiff Hall, Runaway Bay in the parish. Police reports are that Hamilton rented an apartment at the mentioned address and moved in with her daughter in the latter part of January 2023. Hamilton was reportedly experiencing domestic problems and was showing signs of depression. Police said about 10:35 a.m. on Sunday, Hamilton was assisted by her landlord from Linstead, St. Catherine, to her apartment. Shortly after, he took her suitcase to her apartment but realized that the door was locked. While leaving, the police said one of the landlord's other tenants told him that smoke was coming from Hamilton's apartment. Force opened the door and saw thick smoke and fire coming from inside. He attempted to use a hose to extinguish the fire but was unable to do so. The police and fire department were called and the fire was put out by firefighters. The charred remains of the mother and daughter were later found inside the apartment. Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, Desmond McKenzie, has expressed great sadness at the tragedy. We do not yet know the cause of this tragedy, and the Jamaica Fire Brigade and the police are continuing their investigations. However, it is an untimely loss of 2 lives and a period of grief for all who knew them. I also want to offer my condolences to the family members and to the community who are dealing with this unwelcome start to the new week, McKenzie said. According to the police, the incident took place sometime after 12 p.m. Meanwhile, McKenzie is urging greater prevention action as it relates to house fires in Jamaica, noting that house fires left over 1,700 citizens displaced in 2022. I also want to use the opportunity to urge everyone to take greater steps, especially at their houses and places of work, to prevent fires. House fires have resulted in the largest number of deaths and displacement, and we owe it to ourselves, our children, and our elderly relatives to ensure that the incidence of fire decline sharply, the minister said. I'm appealing to everyone to take very great care, especially in the context of the meteorological drought, this dry period that Jamaica is now experiencing. This has implications for a network of fire hydrants across the country, and I'm pleading with everyone to be more aware and more inclined to practice fire prevention at all times, he added. 2 prosecuted as NWC removes illegal connections in St. Elizabeth. 2 people prosecuted and more than 30 illegal connections removed from National Water Commission pipelines during an operation in New Building, St. Elizabeth on the weekend. Those detained will be charged with trespassing on the works of the NWC. According to the NWC, since the commissioning of the water supply system in New Building in November last year, only 16 householders have completed applications and are legally connected. However, several residents have stated that due to the lack of land titles and other requirements needed to complete the application process, they are unable to be legally connected to the water supply system. Residents of New Building were settled there after their lands were bought for bauxite mining. 65-year-old killed by gunman as she checked on family. Maternal instinct drove 65-year-old Barbara Walters to a brave sporadic gunfire Friday night to check on loved ones who were believed to be in harm's way. Her daughter was outside playing bingo. Her grandchild was reportedly milling around. Little did she know that gunmen were still on the prowl after an initial bout of gunfire. As she sought to ensure their safety, the elderly mother of 7 was fatally shot by gunmen firing indiscriminately. The attackers invaded her Admiralton community, more popularly known as Boyd Villa, about 10 p.m. Walter's eldest daughter, Nicola Anderson, said that her sister, Georgia, was unaware that their mother was on Georgia's trail to confirm that the relatives outside were fine. We were outside playing bingo and somebody come and say, "Run!" Because man, them come across the ball field with gun. We run and go lock up in our shop until the shot them cool down, Anderson said of the first round of explosions. Gunfire was heard again, and Anderson took cover again. When the shooting subsided, her world turned upside down. "Somebody run come tell me say my mother dead." Me say, "No, my mother not dead, she in the house." "When me come run and go in the lane, me say my mother upon her face," a tearful Anderson said. They believe that a gunshot that grazed a man on his ear was a fatal round that struck Walters. "If me did run straight, I would and get the bullet in my heart. My mother wouldn't get it. Prefer my life to take instead of my mother own. Me never know she there behind me," Georgia said. "The boy point gun at me duck and him shoot my mother," she added, while being consoled by neighbors. The residents say their section of the community has been experiencing relative peace for some time, so the invasion came as a surprise. Anderson, who has lived in the community for more than 30 years, said she was unaware of any fractiousness that might have sparked the violence. Walters, according to Anderson, would really spend time outside the premises because she was focused on her supplementary snack business. "I will support her. My mother was a loving person and jovial. Everybody loved her, because she just sang her house and that's it. The only time she got a road is when she sat at the bar, and by an hour she gone back inside," Anderson said. The Kingston West Criminal Investigation Branch is investigating the homicide. Up to January 29, the division recorded 11 murders. That figure represents a 37.5% increase year-on-year. "Look out for migrating criminals," says Clarendon cop. Noting 2 recent cases of wanted men seeking solace in the parish, commanding officer for Clarendon, Superintendent of Police Carlos Russell, It is urging residents to keep an eye out for miscreants who may move in next door to them. We are asking citizens in the communities to be on the lookout for migrant criminals coming into their spaces. We have persons who work in adjoining parishes, and when they leave at 5 a.m., they are not back until 9 p.m. sometimes, so some may not know what is happening in the community, he noted. Ross was addressing Thursday's sitting of the Clarendon Municipal Corporation's monthly meeting. On Wednesday, we had an incident in the Longville Park area, where a wanted man from the St. Thomas area was shot and killed by the police. It's the second wanted person since I've been here that was found in that space, stated Russell, as he underscored the need to strengthen citizens' associations and other community groups. Bull Bay warlord Nestor Bigger Crime Morrison was shot dead by security forces in Clarendon on Wednesday, eliciting sighs of relief among some former residents of the 11 miles Bull Bay area known as Lane 8. Morrison was the alleged leader of the Tankwell Hill Gang, which operates out of 11 miles on the St. Andrews-St. Thomas border. It was placed on the police's most wanted list 2 years ago, and a series of operations were launched to capture him, even as he defied orders from the police to turn himself in. Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of crime Fitz Bailey confirmed that he had been killed in an intelligence-driven operation in Longville Park. On Thursday, Superintendent Russell made the point that most of the more than 20,000 people living in Longville Park work outside their community, and others sublet their property, so it can be relatively easy for unsavory characters to gain access and go unnoticed. You'll find that criminals will infiltrate these communities. They are always looking for communities like these where they can come and blend in, so we have to be proactive in how we operate, he said. He urged councillors to continue to encourage residents to support their local police, even as he acknowledged the challenges they face because of inadequate resources. During the meeting, Councillor Sion Barneswell, PMP Hayes Division, commended the security forces for the work they have been doing. These criminals are very brazen. Where Morrison was taken out was just a block away from the Longville Park police station. That's how brave they'll be. They'll come and live right beside you. So it's important for persons, especially in housing schemes, to be aware of who is moving in beside you, so you can be at peace. That when you're gone to work, nobody will break your house, or steal your car, or molest your family members, Barneswell said. JBN, we keep you informed. Please remember to subscribe, like, share, leave us a comment, and click the notification bell to receive our daily news items.